I loved this old house with all my heart. Every creak of the floorboards, every sunbeam through the dusty windows felt like a part of me. For years, I had poured my life into it. I fixed the leaky pipes, painted the peeling walls, and tended the overgrown garden. This wasn't just a house, it was my sanctuary. It held the echoes of generations, a quiet comfort I had always relied on. I felt a deep sense of peace here, a connection to my roots that nowhere else could offer. It was my whole world. Grandma always said this house would be mine. "Aria, my dear," she'd often whisper, "this home carries our family's story. It belongs to you to keep our memories alive." Her words were a sacred promise, a shared understanding among us. I saw myself growing old here, passing on our history to future generations. The thought of it filled me with purpose. It was not just bricks and mortar. It was our legacy, a trust placed in my hands. I believed in that promise with all my being. Aunt Carol started visiting more often. She would sit in the living room, sipping tea, asking about the house's upkeep. Her questions felt too specific, too probing. She'd talk about family assets and modernizing. I felt a prickle of unease. She often spoke in vague terms about my future here, never quite confirming anything, always sidestepping my direct questions. It was subtle, but I sensed a shift, a coldness beneath her polite smile. I just couldn't put my finger on it. One afternoon, I saw a strange car parked down the street. It was a sleek black sedan, not one I recognized. A man in a suit got out and walked slowly past the house, looking up at the windows. He had a clipboard. My stomach tightened. Later, I found a flyer tucked into the mailbox, advertising a local real estate agency. It seemed innocent enough, but combined with Aunt Carol's recent behavior, a cold dread began to settle over me. I tried to shake it off, but the feeling lingered. Then came the day I saw it. A sold sign, stark and brutal, hammered into the front lawn. My breath caught in my throat. The world spun. It felt like a punch to the gut, stealing the air from my lungs. This couldn't be real. My sanctuary, my legacy, my home. How? When? A wave of nausea washed over me. I stumbled back, my hands trembling. This was impossible. This was my life, sold out from under me without a single word. I went straight to Aunt Carol's house. My voice was shaking, but I tried to stay calm. "How could you do this?" I asked, tears stinging my eyes. The house was sold, our home. She looked at me, her expression unreadable. "It was a necessary family decision, Aria," she said, her voice flat. She denied any wrongdoing, even suggested I was overreacting. She gaslighted me, twisting my pain into foolishness. It was like talking to a stranger. My heart shattered. I was left with nowhere to go. My belongings, my entire life, were packed into boxes. The house, my home for so long, was no longer mine. I felt adrift, a ship without a rudder. Every memory, every corner of that house was now just a painful echo. The loss was immense, a gaping hole where my sanctuary used to be. I sat on a curb, staring at the moving truck, feeling completely hollowed out. My sense of security, my very foundation, was gone. The realization hit me hard. My family's heritage, all those years of love and memories, had been reduced to a price tag. It was commodified, bought and sold like any other object. This wasn't just a house. It was generations of our story, desecrated for profit. Grief washed over me, a deep, aching sorrow for what was lost. Disbelief warred with the crushing weight of betrayal. How could my own flesh and blood do something so cruel, so utterly heartless? For days, I just existed in a haze of despair. The pain was a constant companion, but slowly something shifted inside me. The tears began to dry, replaced by a cold, burning anger. This wasn't just about my loss, it was about injustice. It was about a sacred trust broken, a legacy stolen. My grief solidified into a fierce resolve. I needed answers. I needed to understand how this could have happened, how Aunt Carol could have done this to me. I knew I couldn't just let this go. The initial shock had numbed me, but now a clear path emerged in my mind. I had to uncover the truth. There were too many unanswered questions, too many things that didn't add up. I needed to find out how the sale happened, who was involved, and what legal avenues I had. This was no longer just about grieving. It was about fighting back. I would dig deep, no matter what I found. This was my promise to Grandma and to myself. The anger from before had turned into a cold, hard focus. I knew I couldn't just sit and mourn anymore. I had to act. I started with what I knew, piecing together the timeline. I spent hours online, searching property records, sales databases, anything that could shed light on the secret transaction. My desk became a fortress of documents and notes. Every click, every search, felt like a tiny step forward in a very dark tunnel. I was alone in this, but the need to know the truth pushed me on. It didn't take long to find things that just didn't make sense. The sale date was off by weeks from when I first saw the sold sign. Then I found a signature on one of the preliminary documents that looked strange, not quite Aunt Carol's usual neat script. It was almost too perfect, too uniform. A chill ran down my spine. These weren't just mistakes, they felt deliberate. The more I looked, the more a knot of dread tightened in my stomach. This was more than a betrayal, it felt like a lie on paper. I tried calling the real estate agency listed on the old flyer. The person on the other end was polite but evasive. They said the sale was final and confidential. They wouldn't give me any details about the buyers. I felt like I was hitting a brick wall. Each phone call ended the same way, with a polite refusal. It was like everyone involved was hiding something. The resistance I met only made my suspicions grow stronger. Why so much secrecy if everything was above board? The pieces started to fit together in a horrifying way. The falsified dates, the odd signature, the stonewalling from the real estate agents. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This felt like a calculated plan, a fraud. My aunt hadn't just sold our home. She had possibly done it through illegal means. The realization hit me hard, a cold shock. My own flesh and blood had not only betrayed my trust but might have broken the law. The weight of this possibility was immense. I reached out to other family members, hoping for support, for answers. But their reactions only deepened my isolation. Some were vague, saying it was Aunt Carol's business. Others seemed genuinely ignorant, claiming they knew nothing. A few even hinted that I should let it go. No one offered help or showed real concern for my situation. It was clear I was on my own. It hurt to realize how easily they could turn a blind eye, leaving me to fight this battle alone. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the house. Not the sold sign, but the warmth of the kitchen, the scent of Grandma's baking in the living room, the way the light fell in the mornings. Memories flooded back, sharp and painful. I'd find myself staring at old photographs, remembering moments tied to every room. It was like a constant ache, a phantom limb that was no longer there. The emotional toll was heavy, making it hard to focus, but it also fueled my determination. I couldn't let those memories be erased. Despite the emotional drain, I systematically gathered every piece of evidence. I printed out the property records, circled the suspicious dates, and made notes about the odd signature. I found old tax documents that showed the house's value before the sale, highlighting the discrepancy in the selling price. Each document was a small victory, a tangible piece of the puzzle. I felt like a detective, sifting through clues, slowly building a case. It was overwhelming, but I knew I was on the right track. Time felt like my enemy. I knew that with each passing day, the new buyers would settle in, and it would become harder to challenge the sale. The thought of strangers living in my family's home, making new memories where ours once were, filled me with a desperate urgency. I barely slept, driven by the fear of losing my chance. Every minute felt precious, a ticking clock counting down to permanent loss. I had to move fast, but I also had to move smart. I was overwhelmed. I had the evidence, but I didn't know what to do with it. The legal terms were confusing, the process daunting. I realized this was bigger than me, bigger than what I could handle alone. I needed someone who understood the law, someone who could fight for me. The thought of hiring a lawyer scared me. My resources were already stretched thin. But the alternative, doing nothing, was unthinkable. I knew I couldn't afford to lose this fight. I took a deep breath. I had found a few names, some local lawyers specializing in property and fraud cases. My hand trembled as I picked up the phone. It was a terrifying step, admitting I couldn't do this on my own, stepping into a world I didn't understand. But it was also a necessary one. This was my last resort, my only real hope. I knew this call would change everything, setting me on a path I couldn't turn back from. I had to be brave, for Grandma, for our legacy, and for myself. I sat across from Mr. Davies, his office filled with towering books. He listened patiently as I laid out my documents, the suspicious dates, the odd signature. He nodded slowly, then leaned back. I felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. His quiet demeanor told me this wouldn't be easy, that my fight was an uphill climb. Mr. Davies explained the law in a calm, measured voice. Oral promises are hard to prove, Area, he said. And fraud cases, they're complex, expensive. He spoke of legal battles, of Aunt Carol's likely denials. My heart sank with each word. It felt like an impossible mountain to climb, a system designed to protect the powerful, not the wronged. The weight of his words pressed down on me. As we went through the sale documents, Mr. Davies pointed out more details I had missed. A hurried closing date, a property appraisal that seemed unusually low. It was all so precise, so deliberate. This wasn't just a quick sale, it was a well-orchestrated deception. A cold anger began to simmer within me. It confirmed my worst fears about Aunt Carol's true intentions. The legal process felt cold and impersonal. Forms, deadlines, legal jargon. It stripped away the emotional pain, reducing my loss to mere paperwork. I felt like a number, not a person whose life had been uprooted. The system didn't care about Grandma's promise or my broken heart. It only cared about rules and procedures. It was draining, making me feel small and insignificant. Then came the letter. It was from Aunt Carol's lawyer, a sharp, formal notice. It painted me as unstable and obsessed, trying to discredit my claims before they even got to court. My hands trembled as I read it. She wasn't just defending herself. She was attacking me, twisting my pain into a flaw. It was a cruel blow, designed to make me doubt myself. It was clear now. Aunt Carol didn't just want money. She wanted to hurt me, to erase me from the family's story. This wasn't just about profit. It was about power, about inflicting pain. The thought chilled me to the bone. She knew how much that house meant to me, how much I had poured into it. Her actions were a deliberate act of cruelty, a personal vendetta. A week later, Mr. Davies called with bad news. A key piece of my evidence, the discrepancy in the signature, was dismissed as insufficient for a fraud claim. My heart sank. It felt like the walls were closing in, like I was losing ground. All my hard work, all my hope seemed to crumble. I felt powerless, trapped in a system that favored the cunning over the just. But then a different feeling took hold. Not despair, but a cold, burning resolve. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore. This was personal. Aunt Carol had not only stolen my home, but had tried to break my spirit. Her audacity, her calculated cruelty, fueled a new kind of determination. I wouldn't just fight for the house. I would fight for justice, for every tear I'd shed. As I sifted through old family photos, a forgotten detail caught my eye. A faded inscription on the back of a picture of Grandma and Aunt Carol, taken in the house many years ago. It was a date, and a name I didn't recognize, written in Grandma's distinct handwriting. It felt like a whisper from the past, a tiny thread leading somewhere new. A flicker of hope ignited within me. This wasn't just about getting the house back. It was about making Aunt Carol pay for what she had done. Not just legally, but in a way that would truly resonate with her. She had taken my home, my heritage, my peace. Now I would take hers. A chilling clarity settled over me. The fight was far from over. It was only just beginning, and this time, my focus was on making her feel every ounce of the pain she had inflicted. Mr. Davies' words echoed in my mind. The legal system felt like a slow, heavy machine. It was designed for facts, not for the deep ache in my soul. I realized justice, as the law defined it, might not be enough. It wouldn't heal the wound Aunt Carol had inflicted. I needed something more, something that would make her understand the depth of my pain. A new kind of fight began to form in my thoughts. I started gathering information, but not just for the lawsuit. I wanted to understand Aunt Carol, truly understand her. I looked for old newspaper articles, town records, anything that mentioned her past dealings or her reputation. It was like piecing together a hidden history. I wanted to expose the real person behind the polite smile, to dismantle the image she carefully presented to the world. I remembered Grandma's old trunk in the attic, filled with family mementos. I spent hours up there, sifting through old letters, diaries, and even a few forgotten legal papers from decades ago. Some of the letters hinted at past family disputes, whispers of Aunt Carol's manipulations even then. It was like finding hidden chapters of our family story, revealing a pattern I hadn't seen before. Each discovery fueled my resolve. I started making subtle calls, reaching out to distant relatives, asking innocent-sounding questions about Aunt Carol. I didn't accuse, I just wondered about certain things, remembered old stories. I watched as tiny seeds of doubt began to sprout in their minds. It was slow, careful work, like weaving a delicate, invisible web. I wanted them to see her true nature, not just hear it from me. I researched ways to apply pressure, methods that were legal but uncomfortable. I looked into public records of her investments, her business partners, any affiliations that could be scrutinized. I learned about obscure regulations, potential conflicts of interest. It wasn't about breaking the law. It was about using the rules to my advantage, finding the cracks in her seemingly solid world. Every detail felt like a weapon. The psychological warfare began. I felt a strange calm settle over me. This wasn't a desperate lashing out. It was a carefully orchestrated plan. I thought about every move, every subtle action. My anger had cooled into a sharp, precise tool. I would remain composed, unwavering. Aunt Carol would not see me break. She would only see a shadow moving closer, slowly, steadily. There were moments late at night when despair threatened to swallow me whole. The weight of it all, the loneliness. But then, a vivid memory of the house would flash in my mind. Grandma's laugh in the kitchen, the scent of fresh bread, the way the sunlight hit the old wooden floors. It was my sanctuary stolen. That memory reignited the fire, chasing away the shadows. I couldn't give up. I systematically identified Aunt Carol's vulnerabilities. Her vanity, her obsession with appearances, her carefully constructed reputation within the family and community. Her financial pride, too. These were her weakest points, the places where she would feel the most pain. I marked them down, like targets on a map. I knew where to strike, not with brute force, but with precision. I began to map out my multi-pronged plan. Each step was carefully timed, each action designed to build on the last. It wasn't about a single big event, it was a series of small, relentless pressures. I set a definitive timeline, a quiet countdown. This wasn't a race, it was a siege. I would chip away at her world, piece by piece, until it crumbled. My first calculated move was small, almost invisible. I sent an anonymous tip, a perfectly legal piece of information, to a local community group that Aunt Carol was very proud of. It was about a minor, almost forgotten detail of her past, something that would subtly question her integrity without being outright libel. It was just a tiny crack, but I knew it was the beginning. The game had truly begun. The small seed I planted began to sprout. I heard whispers, subtle shifts in conversation among distant relatives. A cousin mentioned Aunt Carol seemed distracted at a recent gathering. It was barely noticeable, but I felt a quiet satisfaction. This was just the beginning, a tiny tremor in her carefully built world. My patience was a weapon. I knew these small cracks would lead to bigger ones. Aunt Carol's usual composure began to crack. I saw her at a community event, her smile tighter than usual, her eyes darting nervously. She snapped at a volunteer over a minor detail, something she would never have done before. The perfect facade she presented was showing its first hairline fractures. It was a small victory, but a clear sign my actions were having an effect. She was feeling the pressure. The subtle shifts grew more obvious. Family members who once defended Aunt Carol now seemed hesitant. Some avoided her. Others started asking me indirect questions about the house, their voices softer, more curious. The wall of silence around her was crumbling, replaced by a growing unease. I felt a quiet sense of validation, watching the truth slowly take root. The family dynamics were changing. Then came Aunt Carol's attack. She called me, her voice sharp and venomous. She accused me of spreading lies, of being unhinged. She tried to make me feel small and guilty, just like before. But I was ready. Her words bounced off me, hollow and desperate. I simply listened, calm and unyielding. Her anger was a sign of her fear, a confirmation that I was hitting my mark. I felt no emotion, just a cold resolve. My relentless digging, combined with the growing unrest, led to a breakthrough. A former associate of Aunt Carol, someone I had cautiously approached, shared a crucial detail. It was about the appraisal of the house before the sale, revealing a deliberate undervaluation that was clearly fraudulent. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was concrete proof, a smoking gun. My heart pounded with a cold triumph. This was what I needed. The news about the undervalued appraisal and the dubious sale began to spread beyond our immediate family. Whispers turned into open discussions in the community. I heard snippets at the grocery store, saw knowing glances. The scandal around the house, once a private agony, was now public knowledge. Aunt Carol's carefully built reputation was taking a severe hit. It was exactly what I had planned. The truth was out. That former associate of Aunt Carol, a woman named Sarah, became my unexpected ally. She had her own grievances, her own stories of Aunt Carol's deceit. Sarah provided me with more documents, internal emails, and even recorded conversations that detailed Aunt Carol's manipulative tactics. Her information was invaluable, a true gift. It felt like the universe was finally on my side, helping me expose the truth. I was not alone anymore. With Sarah's evidence, Mr. Davies had new leverage. He filed an official complaint, and soon the original sale of the Ancestral home came under intense scrutiny. There were calls from official agencies, demands for documents, and talk of investigations. The legal process, once so slow, now moved with a new urgency. It felt like the gears of justice were finally grinding into motion, slow but powerful. We were gaining ground. Aunt Carol's empire was truly crumbling. Her professional reputation, built on years of careful networking, was now tainted. Social invitations dwindled. I heard rumors of canceled deals, of former associates pulling away. Her financial stability, which she guarded so fiercely, was visibly impacted. The fear in her eyes when I saw her from afar was palpable. She was losing everything she valued just as I had lost my home. It was a bitter symmetry. The pieces were all in place. The evidence was overwhelming, the scrutiny intense. The legal invalidation of the sale felt within reach. But I knew this wasn't just about reclaiming the house. It was about a deeper reckoning. I held the final, most devastating piece of information, one that would expose Aunt Carol's core deception to everyone, leaving her with nothing. The end was near, and I was ready to deliver the final blow. Her fate was sealed. The judge's words echoed in the quiet courtroom. My heart pounded, a mix of dread and hope. Then the verdict came, the sale was invalid. A wave of disbelief, then overwhelming relief washed over me. It was real. The house was mine again. The legal battle, the long fight, was finally over. I could barely breathe from the sudden release of tension. I walked out into the sunlight, feeling light, yet heavy. The victory was immense, a profound sense of justice, but the scars remained. The betrayal, the fear, the sleepless nights. They were etched into me, a part of my story now. I knew the pain would fade, but never truly disappear. This was a new beginning, but with a past that would always be a part of me. I saw Aunt Carol then, her face pale, her usual composure shattered. The judge's ruling meant not just the loss of the house, but the unraveling of her carefully built life. She looked small, defeated. It was a stark image, the consequences of her choices laid bare for everyone to see. She avoided my gaze, shrinking into herself. Her world had truly collapsed. News traveled fast. Her reputation, once so solid, crumbled. Business partners pulled away, social invitations stopped. I heard she lost her investments, her status. She was truly isolated, stripped of everything she valued. It was a cold comfort, knowing she was feeling the consequences. But it didn't bring back the years of pain or erase the deep hurt she had caused. Stepping back into the house felt surreal. It was quieter, different. The air was stale, some things moved, some things broken. It wasn't the sanctuary I remembered, not yet. But beneath the dust and disarray, I saw the bones of my home, the potential. A new kind of hope, a gentle warmth, began to fill the empty spaces. This was where I would start again. I started slowly, cleaning, repairing. Every nail I hammered, every brushstroke of paint felt like healing. It was more than just fixing a house, it was mending my spirit. My hands, once trembling with despair, now worked with quiet purpose. This was my act of reclaiming piece by painstaking piece. Each day the house felt more like mine again. The family was fractured. Some, like Sarah, reached out, offering quiet apologies and support. Others, who had turned away, remained distant, unable to face the truth. And some, still loyal to Aunt Carol, saw me as the villain. I accepted it. Not everyone could understand, and I no longer needed their approval. My peace was my own, no matter what they thought. I thought about trust, how easily it could be broken, how deeply it could wound. But I also thought about my own strength, a resilience I never knew I possessed. I had faced the darkest betrayal and emerged. It taught me that my spirit was stronger than any pain, my roots deeper than any house. I found a quiet strength within myself. The house was important, yes, but home now meant something more. It was the feeling of safety I carried within me, the love I fostered. It was about rebuilding, not just walls, but a life founded on honesty and strength. My future would be built on solid ground, a place where true belonging could flourish, not just a physical structure. I was finally free. My journey was long and hard, but I found my way back. I reclaimed my legacy, not just the house, but my peace, my independence. The future felt open, full of quiet possibilities. I had lost so much, but I had gained something invaluable myself. I was strong, whole, and finally, truly home. A deep calm settled over me, a feeling I hadn't known in years.